All right, this is our final exam review, part 2s, which are all the extended response. I'm going to go through what I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading these final exams, so pay close attention and make sure you're taking good notes. All right, 26 says, graph and label each line in the following system of equations. So when we're graphing lines, you do need to show your work, and I am going to take into account and give you credit or take credit away if you don't have this. The two things you need are slope and y-intercept. So remember, we're in y equals mx plus b form. So my slope is 2 and -1. We also need to list our y-intercept. In this case, it's 0 and 9. So that's your work that you need to show. Now let's go to the graph. A couple things we need to have. We need to make sure we label our x and y axis. Now let's graph y equals 2x first. So since our y-intercept is 0, that's our starting point. We're going to put a dot right at 0. Then we're going to go up 2 over 1, because 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1. So up 2 over 1, we're going to do that a couple times. I'm going to get a straight edge. Yes, you should be using a straight edge because that will help you identify your points very clearly. Don't forget to put arrows on the end and label it with the equation of the line. All right, we have y equals -x plus 9. So our starting point is 9. We're going down 1 over 1. So we have a negative slope. I'm going to connect with a straight line. Don't forget your arrows. And then label it y equals -x plus 9. All right, so the solution is where they cross. That would be 3, 6. Now we have to do 2 checks. So I'm going to take the first equation and I'm going to replace my x and y variables. So 6 is equal to 2 times 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. So it works in the first equation. Now let's do it in the second. We have 6 equals -3 plus 9. -3 plus 9 is not 9, but it is 6, which means this works as well. So that's our checks. All right, 27. We're going to solve this algebraically this time. So we're not going to graph. We're going to solve it algebraically. Remember the two methods that we had were substitution and elimination. Substitution is when you have something like x equals y equals. If you have both in standard form, that was your elimination method. So we're going to take this value and we're going to replace the x with it in the second equation. So we have, oh, I almost didn't replace. So at 3x, so 3 times -y plus 2, that's my x value, minus y equals 10. Okay, I'm going to distribute first, so that's -3y. 3 times 2 is 6. Now, -3y and -1y is -4y. Now just solve your two-step equation. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. Divide both sides by -4. So y is equal to -1. That's our y value. Now let's find our x value. I'm going to use the first equation to do that because I'm going to replace y with -1. Now, -1 is +1. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So my solution, my x value is 3. My y value is -1. It says to show all work, identify your solution. It does not say to check. But if you did do checks, that would just prove that you were either right or wrong, which may be good when you're taking a final exam. All right, 28. Okay, so we're taking a road trip. Here's a map that shows us, or our graph that shows us our miles driven over our time. So the rate of change. Rate of change is the same thing as slope. So slope is going to be your change in y. So that's 330 minus 55 over your change in x, which is 6 minus 1. So I'm going to bring my calculator in here. 330 minus 55 is 275 over 5. So I'm just going to divide that by 5. Which is 55. So my slope is 55. So that means that's my rate of change is 55. All right. So what does this mean in terms of the graph? That means that you drove 55 miles for every 1 hour. So I don't even know. The family drives 55 miles for every 1 hour. Actually, you need to have the word increase or decrease in there. So driving means that you're increasing. But I would actually maybe even prefer if you wrote that the amount of miles driven increases by 55 miles for every 1 hour. That would be a better sentence. All right, so what does the y-intercept mean? The y-intercept is 0, so that means at 0 miles were driven at 0 hours. So let's write an equation. Now that you have the slope and y-intercept, let's use y equals mx plus b format. So we have y equals 55x, and then you can have plus 0, but you don't need it. So how many miles were driven after 3 hours? Now remember, that's your x value, so I'm going to replace x with 3. So 55 times 3 is 165 miles. Now, how would the slope of this line change if the graph was based on miles left to go instead of miles driven? Well, left to go would mean that the mileage would decrease, so your slope would be negative. Because mileage is decreasing. All right, number 29. This one we're comparing two functions. Now, in class, we talked about when you're comparing two functions, there are 4 things that you're going to be looking for, and I want you to write these down. The first thing is that you have to look at the slope. You have to look at the y-intercept. You have to look at the type of slope. Is it positive? Is it negative? And number 4, you have to look at the function rule. That's what you're comparing when you're looking for similarities and differences. So let's actually find these for both of these graphs. Let's start with Jeff's. Okay, so we have this one is going up by 4. This is going up by 2. So my slope, change in y over change in x, which is 2. My y-intercept, if I follow this pattern of going down by 4, I get to 0. Follow this pattern of going down by 2, I get to 0. So that means my y-intercept is 0. Making my equation y equals 2x. All right, so let's look at this one. My slope, I'm going to do rise over run. It's going up 2 over 1, which is 2. My y-intercept is negative 5, which makes my equation y equals 2x minus 5. So those are the things that we're looking for. So let's look at similarities. Okay, looking at the slope is 2, slope is 2. So that would be similar. So number 1, slopes are both 2. Y-intercepts, this one's negative 5, this one is 0, so that's a difference. So y-intercept in Jeff's function is 0, and in Clara's is negative 5. Now look at type of slope. What type of slope is this? This is positive. Positive, so both slopes are positives. Now let's look at the function rule. Both are different. The y-intercepts are different. So Jeff's function rule is y equals 2x, and Clara's function rule y equals 2x minus 5. So those are differences. All right, number 30. Okay, it says solve the equation. So let's start by combining like terms, distributing, stuff like that. So 6x plus 2x is 8x. We're going to distribute this. This is negative 10x plus 50. So I'm going to add 10x to both sides to continue solving this. So 18x minus 4 is equal to 50. Now let's add 4 to both sides. So 18x is equal to 54. Divide both sides by 18. So let me bring my calculator in here. 54 divided by 18 gives us 3. So here's my solution for the first one. It does not say to check. All right, second one, let's do the same thing. 4x minus 12 we can't do anything with. We can distribute over here, so that's 3x plus 6. Now let's combine like terms. So 3x and x is 4x. 6 and negative 10 is negative 4. Okay, let's get all the x's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 4x. Notice it cancels out on both sides, so I have negative 12 is equal to negative 10. Now, obviously, that cannot happen, which means that there is no solution to this equation. All right, in part C, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to distribute first. So you get 5x minus 10. Now let's combine like terms. So 5x minus 10. This way we have 2x and 3x is 5x. 8 and negative 18 is negative 10. Let's combine our x's first, and notice that they're going to cancel out again. But this time we're left with negative 10 equals negative 10. That means no matter what you put in there, it's going to work, which we call infinitely many solutions. All right, number 31. This one says draw a sequential image of QRS after a reflection over the y-axis followed by a dilation of 1/2. So let's reflect it first. Remember, you're going to count the same amount of spaces past the x-axis. So this right here is going to be r prime. Count 2 up to, this will be q prime. And s, we're going to go up to 4. So that's s prime. So here's my image after the reflection. Now I'm going to identify q, r, and s, the new q, r, and s. So q is 2, 2. R prime is 4, negative 2. And s is 8, 4. Now there's a reason I'm doing this, because a dilation means that you're going to multiply each term or each coordinate by that 1/2. So 1/2 of 2 is 1. R double prime, you're going to multiply 4 times 1/2, which is 2. That would be 2, negative 1. And that would be 4, 2. So now just go back on your graph and plot those points. So here's 1, 1. Let's label it Q double prime. 2, negative 1 is going to be labeled R double prime. And 4, 2, which is already R, we're going to label that S double prime. Here's your image after the dilation. It changes the size of your shape. All right, 32. The main mast of a fishing boat is supported by a sturdy rope that extends from the top of the mast to the deck. So here's our picture. That's the rope. It says the mast is 20 feet tall. Rope is attached 15 feet away. So here's how long is the rope. Now notice this is going to be a right triangle, so we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. So we have 15 squared plus 20 squared, because we're trying to find our hypotenuse, the number right across from the right angle. So 15 squared is 225. Oh, not 224, 225. 20 squared is 400. So this is 625 is equal to c squared. To solve for c, you're going to take the square root of both sides, and if you do that, you get 25 feet. All right, 33 is an exponent rule, so we have to know that. When you're raising power to a power, you're multiplying. If you need to write that down, go ahead. So negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. This you're multiplying same base, so you add. Again, if you need to write that down, do that. 5 plus negative 7 is negative 2. And now when you have division of same exponent, you're going to subtract. So negative 5 minus negative 2. Leave change, and you get negative 3. So that's 2 to the negative third. Now that is not simplified. You can't have a negative exponent, so you're going to take the reciprocal and make it a positive exponent. So our answer to this would be 1 over 2 to the third. All right, last one, number 34. Find the volume of the cylinder. According to the formula sheet you have, volume is pi r squared h. So r is your radius, which is 5, and your height is 10. Let's just do some math on that. 5 squared is 25. So 25 times 10 is 250. So this is 250 pi, but it does ask you to round. So I'm going to take my calculator. 250 times pi is 785.3981634. Now, nearest hundredth, which would be the 9, 8 tells us to go up, which is actually pushing the tenths value to 4. And this would be centimeters cubed. And don't forget to put the 0 after that, signifying that you are rounding to the nearest hundredth. All right, good luck studying. You will do fine. Just make sure you know everything in this review packet as it is very similar to the final exam.